So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the general training for PeopleImport this lovely Wednesday morning. Everybody is in listen-only mode. Okay, so if you need me, please type in your question into the questions box. When I get a nice moment to stop, I'll take a look at it. Okay, I am recording today's training. I will show you in a moment how you can request that recording after our session is done today. Okay, all right, we're going to start today with just some basics. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm actually going to log in. So just for everybody's kind of basics, when you're logging into PeopleImport, you're logging in with your Salesforce username and password. Okay, there are two tabs here, right? You've got your API login and your OAuth login. If you're logging in via the API login, you may be required to use a security token. This is based on your security setup in Salesforce. Okay, so you know, if you're required to use a token, that goes after your password, no spaces before or after. Make sure if you're like cutting and pasting that you don't accidentally have a space before or after. Okay, so it's password first, then the security token. Okay. If you're using the OAuth login screen, you are never required to use the security token. Okay, you'll notice the screen will save names as well. So you can always log in with a different username or whatever it might be. If you are logging into a sandbox, okay? If you're logging into a sandbox and you log in via the OAuth login, you simply have to check this little box down here for sandbox login. If you're using the API login to log into a sandbox, you have to go to this proxy endpoint setup up here in the top right. And that would require using a custom endpoint, and you'd have to gather your partner WSDL from Salesforce. We also have in our online help documentation what that looks like. Okay, I'll show you that real quick. So in PeopleImport, you can see there's this section here, options, proxy, and sandbox settings. If you go to sandbox settings, there's some information about the different login options. And you'll also notice right here, this is what that endpoint would look like. We're actually on the 37 API currently. Okay, the next version will be 39. Just so you know, we have a quick question here. Hi, Carolyn. PeopleImport is a separate software than Demand Tools. Yep, and it's available as a download. Okay, let's head back to PeopleImport real quick. Okay, so that's just kind of your general logins. It can get a little bit, you know, interesting. If you have SSO, you are required to log in via the OAuth login screen. If you do not have SSO, you can use either tab. Okay. All right. So I'm already in the tool, so we'll just go ahead into it. This is your today page of PeopleImport. You'll notice your version is up here at the top left. If there's an upgrade available, it will be under here. It's a big box. It'll appear. It's very large. It's hard to miss. Asking you to upgrade. We do suggest that you upgrade. When you see that, just to prevent any kind of glitches or API differences or anything like that. There's always bug fixes and different things in the new upgrades. Okay. Over here to the right, you'll see your user information and your time left to renew. Okay, just information. If we look down here at the bottom of the screen in the gray bar, it shows who I'm logged in as. Okay, this is useful. We do allow you to log into sandboxes and DevWorks. So this will, you know, help you know if you're in the right place. Okay, I'm in Hotshot. Sorry about that. File Explorer popped up. I'm in a Hotshot. That's my demo at work, so that's great. If I were in Serum Fusion, I would know it's in, you know, production and so on and so forth. Okay, and then over here to the right, just in case you were wondering, this NA2, that's the Salesforce server I'm on, and you can see that I'm accessing the 37.0 API, which is the current API. Okay. All right. Let's talk about some of these boxes here. This self-help. Okay, if you go into here, you'll see a knowledge base. Just for your information, knowledge base is great for looking up common errors. So let's say you got an error like this. Okay, you could click Find Solutions, and then you'll have a pop-up of possible solutions of what that might be. Okay, just so you know. Online help, that's where we just were. So that'll take you directly to here where you can do, you know, step-by-step instructions or best practices or different things that you were looking for. The help documentation is extensive, as you can see. And it's just a matter of understanding what you're looking for and where it would be. Okay. All right, and then of course we have facts here and some tutorial videos. Okay. This second box here, this is live training. So you're with me today for live training. I appreciate that. This is where you can schedule any. And of course, we have public trainings on all modules. So we're in PeopleImport, but we have demand tools as well as DoBlocker and our scheduling tool called Job Builder. Okay. We offer several a month at varying times. You would just click on this. It'll tell you what the tool does and allow you to register. I'm sure that's probably how you got to me today, but just in case somebody signed up for you. This tech support button, this is how you're going to log a case with us. Okay, this is also how you're going to request a recording for today. Okay, so you're going to enter the required information. You'll see the little red asterisk for required. Okay, and the case reason for today, it's just going to be recorded webinar request. But if you have other case reasons, make sure that you really indicate what the issue is. Did you get an error? Is it a general question? Did you get unexpected results? Right? If there's any kind of user changes, that's for sales. So this just helps you get to the quickest, the correct place, if you will, the quickest. So if you're going to request a recording today, you're just going to do that. You're going to select your product, which is PeopleImport, and just a quick note, please send me today's training. Okay? Perfect. The last thing that I want to talk about generally is the options menu in PeopleImport. And you'll notice that you can get there by the bottom left here. It's over here under options. And this bottom bar, by the way, this stays throughout every single stage, so you'll always see it there. So if I click on options, we're going to talk about this later, but over here to the right, you can see where you can initiate auto login. This general auto login is the API, right? So if you're logging in through the API and you want to save those credentials, that's what that would be. And the second box is if you're logging in via OAuth, okay? Expand mapping options, that's checked by default. That's just, we'll see that in stage 1. Use Salesforce to view objects. I have mine checked. It is not by default, and I'll show you what that looks like, the difference in that when we get to that point. Okay, but you can kind of see your default batch sizes. This Salesforce timeout in minutes, if you have a little notepad, I would love that to be 10. Our recommended time would be 10. It's 2 by default, okay? And we'll talk about this one as well when we get there. You also know the second tab here, file paths. This is where everything is stored by default. Okay, so if I asked you for a log file, it will be in your documents, PeopleImport data log files. Okay, you can change these file paths, guys. Just make sure that if you change the file path here, that you move that folder there so that PeopleImport knows where to look for it. Okay, all right, I have a quick question. I'm just going to grab it. Hi, Jackie. OAuth login is required for people who have SSO enabled in their org. Okay, if you do not have SSO, you can log in either way. The OAuth login is nice because it doesn't require the security token. Okay, it does a long-term token in Salesforce. So it's just a matter of preference. It's also easier to switch between Sandbox and production when you use OAuth because you just have to check a box. If you use API to log into the Sandbox, you have to go into the proxy settings, take it off, restart the tool. Okay, that's the difference. But the reason we have OAuth is because we do have customers with SSO enabled and they have to use OAuth. Okay, good question. All right, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get started. So what I want you to remember about PeopleImport, it's geared toward taking an external spreadsheet of person data, right? PeopleImport, so it's person data, okay? And it compares it to your existing contacts and lead data in Salesforce, okay, prior to importing, and then, inserts or updates information, okay? So really, it's a kind of all-in-one tool to prevent creation of duplicates, okay? And again, it's people data, okay? You're not going to want to try and use this to ferret out accounts, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start in stage 1 over here to the left. So I'm going to click on stage 1. All right. So this first stage is where we're going to load our file. So of course we're going to have that external file of data, okay? So the first step here is to go to the top right and say select file, okay? Now I'm out in File Explorer, so I can grab a file here. I think I'm just going to load this CSV file really quickly so we can see what that looks like. So you'll notice that if I load a CSV file, okay, that it says 35 records loaded in red up here to the left. Okay, CSV, automatically loads. Okay. Now, we're going to load an Excel file today so we can see the difference. So if I go up and select a file again, and I open up an Excel file, you'll notice that it didn't load, right? No column headers populated down here, no records loaded in red. That's because Excel has multiple worksheets, right? So, excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. So if I have multiple worksheets, I have to tell it which worksheet to use, right? So I'm going to use this November PI list. I can either highlight it and go over here to the right and say use, or I can double click the sheet. Okay, and when you double click, it will load it. Okay, so whatever's easier, either click and use or double click. Okay, you'll know that the file is loaded because you'll see the records loaded in red, and of course you'll notice down here that your column headers have been populated. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what that file looks like. Okay, just so you kind of can see the information that we're looking at here. So we've got a first name, last name, title, street, city, state, post, country, phone, fax, email, company, and description. Okay, so it's just kind of a standard file. You can have as much information as you need in here. Okay, obviously we need to have information that we can match to, right? But it can, you can definitely have many more column headers and things like that in here. Let's go ahead, let's just add 2 more fields really quickly. Okay. Okay. So as we're looking here, what we're seeing is the column headers here from my file and here. This here is the lead table, right? And all the fields that are available on my lead object. And over here is the contact table and all the fields that are available there. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to decide whether we're going to compare our spreadsheet to leads or to contacts or to both. Okay, so if I decide that I only want to compare my people data to current existing leads in Salesforce, what I would do is I would come up here and just select this lead radio button. You'll notice it'll gray out the contact section, right? If I only want to compare it to contacts, I would choose the contact option, and you'll notice it grays out the leads. Okay. For our demo purposes today, we're going to compare it to both. So we're going to select leads and contacts. Okay, and we're going to compare to both tables. Okay. All right, now the easiest way to map your fields from your spreadsheet to your fields in Salesforce is to go up here in the middle section and say Auto Map. So I'm just going to click Auto Map. All right, if you see a blue flag, that means it's been mapped. If you don't see the flag, it hasn't been. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the lead table, and we're just going to scroll through and make sure that it makes sense how it mapped it, right? So I always tell people, do a quick double check, make sure everything mapped appropriately. Description, email, fax. Good. Okay. Now, you'll notice that that status field mapped, and the status is actually my campaign status. And campaigns don't reside, they reside on a separate table, right? So I actually don't want to map that field to the lead status field. I want it to be the status of the campaign. So I need to remove it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and say remove mapping. Okay, and now it comes off because I don't need to map those here. Now, we are going to be matching fields in stage 3. Obviously, when we match them, we're saying, how do we determine if it exists, right? So I might match my spreadsheet to what's in Salesforce. If they aren't mapped here, you can't match on them, okay? Now, that's okay with me, right? Because I don't want to match on the campaign ID, right? This is not important to me. We're going to add that later, but I don't need to match on it. But it's just something to remember. If you don't map to it here, you can't match on it, okay? All right. Another thing that you want to look at are these boxes underneath here, okay? Now, that was one of the settings and options. The one that's checked by default, expand mapping options, I have it checked so I can see each of them. I do think that's important. So let's talk about what this means. This little box is a little bit hypothetical, okay? So it's saying, what should we do if we are inserting a new lead, and what should we do if we're updating a lead, right? Because we're on the lead table here. And you can see that it's field specific, right? It's specific to this city field on the lead. What this is saying, we've got insert. So it's saying, if we don't find the lead and we insert a new lead, should we insert this field? Okay? If it's checked, it means yes, insert this city field. Okay? The 3 in the middle are what happens if you want to update a lead. Okay, so for the city field, should I update the lead, the city field on the existing lead? Should I not update it, or should I update it only if blank? Okay, so you can see I've got update only if it's blank in Salesforce. Okay, so I'm basically saying don't overwrite it with what's in my spreadsheet. If you do want to overwrite it, if it's in your spreadsheet, you would say update. If you never want to, you would say do not update. Okay, and this show in grid, this means that you'll actually see it in the results grid. Most people generally want to see all fields in that grid so they could compare data. Okay, but that's up to you. All right, now you'll notice that for mine, as we're kind of scrolling through, that I've got insert and update only if blank on all of these. You see that? Again, if we go back to that options menu, these are my defaults that I've already set: show in grid, insert, update only if blank. And I have the same thing for contacts, which we'll see there as well. You can change these to be default. So when you click auto map and it maps them, it'll automatically default to this. Okay? So you'll know that. Just makes life a little easier if you're mapping things. Okay? All right. Let's look at the description field, because that one is a little bit different. Now we know the description field is a long area text field, right? So if we know that, we'll see this, that we have this extra option called merge. So for my description field, what I can do is, maybe it's not blank, there's already information in there, but because this is a long text area field, I can actually merge the data from my spreadsheet with what's already in Salesforce, therefore not losing anything. So for this field, I'm going to select merge so that my description will just be appended to the current description in Salesforce. Okay? And those are all my fields. All right, does anybody have any questions so far? Looks like we're still cruising. Okay, so let's look at the contact section. Again, very similar, right? Here's my description field. I'm going to merge this one too. I'm just going to make sure that everything's mapped. Now, these fields are called mailing city, mailing state, right? So they should have mapped properly. S name, mailing city, mailing state. Okay, so what I want you to pay attention to is as you scroll down through this, you're going to notice that these pink fields become blue. Sorry, we have a quick question I'm going to answer before I get to that. When you merge a field like description, is the new data on top or bottom? It's appended. Appended means after, Carolyn. So the data from your spreadsheet that you're updating with, it appends to it. Okay. If we do not use leads, will PeopleImport also work for accounts? Are you inserting contacts, Samuel? Sure, yeah, contacts are attached to accounts, but yeah, that's fine. You can use this if you're inserting people data, and we're going to get to where the account process comes in, Samuel. But yes, you can take your people data and compare it to just contacts, and it of course is going to link to accounts and or insert contacts attached to accounts and things like that, right? But yeah, you wouldn't just take a list of accounts to import. That's not what PeopleImport is for, but yes, it will. Good question. Okay, so over here to the right, again, as I was saying, the pink fields are purple, however you see that color there. Those are your contact fields. You'll notice that these blue fields are your account fields, because just as I was answering that question for Samuel, it's a nice lead-in. Contacts are associated to accounts, right? They shouldn't be floating out in the ether. They should always be linked to an account. If you happen to be colorblind and you can't see these colors, blue, these fields will always start with the word account dot and then the field name. Okay, and you'll notice that everything is in alphabetical order, so when you get down to the TZ, whatever is the last field for your contacts, it'll automatically start with an A, so that's a good delineation too if you can't see those colors. Okay, all right, and you'll also notice that the mailing city field got mapped to the billing city field on the account. Okay, that's where it went by default. I can move it to shipping if I needed to, but the point being that you can map your column headers here to multiple fields over here, okay? Because mailing city, of course, is up here as well, right? It's up here in the contact section also, Okay, so you are going to want to map those fields to the account as well. And we can even, if we wanted to, map those fields to the shipping fields. Remember, if you want to match to them, right, so we'll get there in stage two. If we wanted to say, you know, find the accounts where the mailing street in my spreadsheet is to the shipping street in Salesforce, I would need to map to that here as well. Okay. Now, the biggest thing you want to remember here is we are mapping to account fields. We really want to pay attention to what happens here in this box. Okay. If you're updating a contact or inserting a contact, right, to an existing account, it will update your account data in Salesforce with the information in your spreadsheet if you have update clicked here. Okay? It will change your accounts. Contacts are linked to accounts. Okay? So you definitely want to remember that you can change that data with your person data from your external spreadsheet if you don't have things properly selected here. Okay? All right. That's a common question we get. People don't understand why their accounts are being updated. This is why. Okay, so make sure that you have update only if blank or do not update if you do not want to change your accounts in Salesforce based on your spreadsheet data. Okay. Right. I'm going to take up the description here in the account. I don't need to add anything to the account description as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So that is the basics of the mappings. Okay. There is a function here called check. It's up here next to automap. Okay. The nice thing about check is it'll look for any errors in your spreadsheet data. Okay. It won't catch everything, guys, but it will take a look at common things. So if I click check, okay, this little pop-up will show up. And it says down here at the bottom left, there's 2 errors. Error count 2, we're looking at record 1 of 2. And we can see here that the error message says invalid email address. Okay, and here is that email address. Now you'll notice there's a space in there between the WR and queries. Okay, that's not viable, right? It'd have to be an underscore or something like that. So what I can do is I can make this correction right now. All right, so I can say copy the current value. It pops up down here for me, change to, and then I can just go in here and take out the space, and then I can say update the value. You'll notice it turns green. It says fixed by user. Okay. Now, if you come in here and there's 3 errors, you can just quickly fix them. If there are 300, it's probably easier to go ahead and go back to your spreadsheet and make those quick changes, right? Or do it in a more efficient manner than going through these record by record by record. Okay. The other thing you want to remember is I just did that, but PeopleImport didn't locate my Excel spreadsheet and make the change for me in there. So it's still going to show, with that space in there in my spreadsheet. It's just changed it as it's loaded the data into the tool. Okay. If you want to get to the second record, you would just click this arrow record here or record here. Okay, so this is the next one. I'm going to leave this one because I want to show you what happens if you accidentally forget the check step here. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to click OK. It's going to give me, hey, there are unresolved errors. I'm going to say yes. Let's just exit anyway. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the last thing on the screen, which would be clear mapping, load mapping, save mapping. So you can save the mappings here. Okay. Now, it is specific to what you've done here. So if you have these spreadsheets where you've always got the exact same column names and you want to do the same update options and insert options, you can save your mapping. Now, I want to point out that you can save the scenario. See down here at the bottom left? You can save scenarios as well. A scenario is all 5 stages. When you save a scenario, it also saves the mapping. Okay? So you don't have to do both. You don't have to save the mapping and the scenario. This is, a lot of times people will have specific things, spreadsheets that always look the same, and the mapping should always be the same, but they want to do different things in different stages, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? That would be a case where you would save the mapping to use at your leisure, right? But if you just want to save the whole scenario, it will save this mapping as well. Okay? All right, we're going to move on to stage 2. So if there are any questions on stage 1, let's go ahead and have them now. Okay. Looks like everybody's good. Great. Stage 2. You can get to stage 2 by clicking over here to the left, stage 2, or going down to the bottom right and saying next. Okay. Stage 2 is where you can condition data. You might want to condition data. Let's say my spreadsheet of person data is, all of them are in South Carolina, right? Or maybe they're in New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, right? Instead of querying your whole database, you can condense what you query, right? Which speeds up the process and makes things a little easier on this end, okay? So there will be some reasons. Now, you know, another reason might be maybe you have specific record types you only want to compare to, right? Maybe your spreadsheets should only be compared to those. You might condition by that, okay? So it's a way to set which records you're comparing to in Salesforce, okay? And you'll notice at the top here, we've got leads, that's the lead table, the middle is contacts, and the bottom is accounts. Obviously, if I was only comparing to leads in stage 1 here, right, it would only show me this as being active. These would be grayed out and I wouldn't be able to select those. And vice versa for your contacts. It would just show contacts and accounts and no leads, okay? You'll notice over here to the right that use all leads is leads, contacts, and accounts. That's what's selected, so it's grayed out. Because this is basically saying, compare my spreadsheet to all of the data in Salesforce, okay? We are going to set parameters so that you can understand how conditioning works. If you understand how conditioning works in demand tools, you're a demand tools user, this will be second hat to you. So we're going to go ahead and say you select leads up here to the top right. You'll notice that this is ungrayed out. You can move these boxes to make things more visually, you know, easier to see visually, if you will. So if I just kind of hover over this here, I can drag this down, make this section bigger so we can see the leads a little easier. All right, so let's look over here. Let's say I'm going to set a condition that says I only want to compare my spreadsheet to Jennifer's leads in the state of South Carolina or Jennifer's leads in the city of Phoenix. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. So we are going to start simply with the state field on the leads. You can scroll here through the fields. If you want to get to them more quickly, you can type in the first 3 letters. Okay, so if I did STA really quickly, it would take me to that. Now, obviously, if there were something above this, I'd have to scroll a little bit too, right? But it'll at least get you back to the first 3 letters. All right, so I'm going to say state. In the operator section, you'll notice I have equal. I have exclamation equal, which is your not equal to, right? Starts with, ends with, contains. Not starts, not contains, like, not like. Okay, the operators will change with the type of field. If it's numeric, you'll also see greater than, less than. If it's date, you'll see greater than, less than. Okay, so we're going to do equals. We're going to do South Carolina. Now, let's say I'm not sure all my data is as standard as I like it to be in Salesforce. I know that never happens, right? Data is always standardized. But let's say there could be a possibility of these 3 options. It could either be SC, South Carolina, or S period, C period. Okay, so I'm going to enter all 3 in that value section. There's 3 things that I want you to remember about the value section. Okay, the first thing is that it's not case sensitive. So it doesn't matter whether I type it uppercase, lowercase, proper case, it'll compare all cases to all cases. Okay. Second thing is that the values here are ORed. Now that makes sense because we wouldn't imagine that somebody would type in SC, South Carolina, S period, C period in that state field. So it's saying look for any of these values in that field. The third thing I want you to remember is that the comma is the separator. PeopleImport will look for anything after the comma in that field. So if you type this, like you normally do when you're typing a paragraph, comma, space, PeopleImport is actually going to look for space, South Carolina, space, S period, C period. It's not going to find anything more than likely, right? All right, let's add that condition in properly. So we're going to go over here to the right and say add the condition. We'll notice it pops in the current conditions on the bottom. You'll notice that the comma turned into a pipe. I applied it improperly because I wanted to, for our visual people, I wanted you to be able to see what this looks like. Visually, if you see this spread out like this, you'll know you have too many spaces. Okay, so if you've applied a lot of conditions and you visually look at it and it's spread out, you'll know you've got too many spaces in there. So what we can do is we can simply go back up to that same one, remove the spaces out of there, and then over here to the right, I can just say update condition. Now, as we visually look at it, they're all smushed together. I can't think of a better word than smushed, sorry. But I know that that's proper now. All right, let's go ahead and go to that city field. City equals Phoenix. Again, operators are the same as that state field. Okay, we're going to add that condition. Now I have two current conditions, state and city. What you want to remember about your current conditions is these are automatically ANDed. So this says only query leads in the state of South Carolina and in the city of Phoenix. That's not going to work, right? There is no Phoenix, South Carolina. So what you want to remember about this is to get an OR, you have to click this expert mode button. So I'm going to click expert mode. You'll notice when I did that this OR group popped up. I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to uncheck it, pay attention to the right side of the screen, check it. Now we've got an OR group. If the OR group number is the same, like it is here with the 1 and 1, they're ANDed. Okay, so these two are still ANDed. In order to get an OR, I just need to make the OR groups different. Okay, so to do that quite easily, you just click on one of the ones, type 2 on your keyboard, enter on your keyboard. Now we can see I have two headers, OR group 1, OR group 2. Perfect. Let's add the owner information. So it should be Jennifer's. We'll notice that we have three options for owner. Okay, we've got owner ID. So if I know my user ID, I can enter here in the value section. I don't have it memorized, so let's try something else. Owner alias. So now I have a pick list of aliases in my OR. Or I can simply go to owner name, and I have a pick list of my users. You'll notice you have inactive users in here as well. Sometimes query conditions are built off those. They'll always be there. If you have a very large org and it's a pain to scroll through the whole thing, what you can do is you can right-click in this section. You can say filter list. And then let's say I type the first 4 of my last name and say OK. Now I have it condensed. If you typed improperly or you want to get back to the whole list, you right-click and say reset. That option is available on any kind of pick list value. So if you had a pick list field or multi-select or anything like that, you'll be able to do that. All right, so I'm going to select my active user and add that condition. And we'll notice that it went into OR group 1. So OR group 1 is ANDed. Jennifer's accounts in the state of leads in the state of South Carolina or leads in the city of Phoenix. And we need it to be or Jennifer's leads in the city of Phoenix. So we need to get that owner into group 2. So to do that simply, we just go up, same condition, say add the condition again. You notice it put it into OR group 1 by default. We flip one of them to a 2, and now we have our 2 OR groups. So in Salesforce, the filter would look like left paren 1 or 2, right paren and 3. Right, where that and 3 is the owner. Are there any questions about conditioning? I'm going to show a couple of different fields as well, so think about your questions. Let's talk about a date field. Let's say create a date. You'll notice that we've got a value section here, and if we click the down arrow, it's a calendar, right? And you can't clear this out, just so you know. But you'll notice the operators for date fields, greater than, less than, and then we have our dynamics, which is nice. Dynamics are great if you're saving scenarios, right? If you wanted to do last month, that's not dynamic, right? You could easily put in value section greater than such and such date and less than such and such date, but if you ever wanted to use it in the future, it's no longer viable, right? So these dynamic operators are great. You'll notice that at the bottom we've got empty date and not empty date because you can't clear out that value section. That's what that would work. Let's say we wanted to say created date was yesterday. Okay, you can ignore the value section, and when you add the condition, you'll notice created date equals yesterday. What about a number field? Number of employees for us. Let's take a look at that operator section. you'll notice that we have equals null, not null. Best practice is to do it from the operator section and not do equals blank. So equals null here, add the condition. If you are looking for something that is blank, like middle name equals blank, you would just leave the value section empty. Don't type blank, don't type null, just leave it empty and add that condition. Middle name equals nothing. Okay? I'm going to uncheck expert mode, and I'm going to get rid of everything but state. So to get rid of a line here, you would highlight it from this blue box on the left and click delete on your keyboard. Delete, delete. If you are using a Mac and you're using Parallels or Boot Camp or some other Windows emulator software, it's actually function delete. Okay? So delete for our PC users, function delete for our Mac users. All right. All right, I'm going to set a couple of conditions here for my contacts and accounts. Now is a great time for questions before we move on to stage 3. Everybody's so quiet. I hope that's because you've already done conditioning so much. It's probably just a refresher. Good. So we'll move on to stage 3. Stage 3 is where we tell it how to match the data. Okay. This is where we're going to filter through to see if they already exist or not. So as we look here, we can see that we've got step 1, step 2, step 3, final match. And those will always be there. Best practice is to go rigid and loosen as we go. We don't want to go so loose that it gives us a false positive. We want to make sure that what we match to is truly a match. So it's a little bit of testing and seeing if it works and doing a little bit of research when you get your results. It can take a little bit of time to tweak it for your org. I'm going to show you what I would do today, fleshing it out in a big way. Some companies can go a lot less than this. Some go a lot more. It's going to be entirely dependent about what you have in your org. When we match fields, the data has to be populated both in our spreadsheet and in Salesforce to match. Okay. All right. This step section here works like a funnel. So if I have 36 records in my data source and 6 of them match in the first step, only the next 30 will be compared in step 2. 10 match there, 20 in step 3, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's going to match it in the most rigid step that it can first, and then it's not going to look at it again. All right, you can determine what you want to match to first. This starts with lead and then moves to contacts and then accounts. If you wanted it to be contacts, I could click on contact. Over here to the right, I would check move up. Click move up. And now I'm matching to the contacts first. So just think about process, what you want to match to first. I'm going to start with lead, so we're going to put that back how it was. Okay. So the first thing we want to do here with this lead match is, we can rename these, by the way, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to add some match conditions. So I'm going to say add match condition. And then when I open up this field to match section here, with this down arrow, you'll notice that how I mapped in stage 1 is what I'm seeing here for the leads, right? Because we're on that table. So this is my spreadsheet on the left. This is the field in Salesforce on the right. So I'm going to match the first name from my spreadsheet to the first name in Salesforce. Great. Let's match another field. For this one, I'm going to match the last name to the last name. For this one, I'm going to match the email to the email. For this one, I'm going to match the company data. I'm also going to match the city and the state. This is my rigid step. When you list all of these here like this, every single field has to match to return that duplicate, right, or that existing record. So the first and the last and the email and the company and the city and the state all have to match here. So let's talk about this first name field. The most important section here, well, what I think is the most important section would be this mapping type section here. It would be nice if everything matched exactly. That generally doesn't happen. So you'll notice that we have many mapping types. Okay, they're listed A to Z. We're going to go over the most common today. There is a link to documentation, so let's jump out there real quick. Here's PeopleImport. You'll notice under matching, which is stage 3, there's this section called mapping types. Here's every single one of them. And if you kind of scroll down, you'll see it'll give a statement about what it is and an example of how it works. I highly suggest that you bookmark that so that you can reference it. But we'll go over the, as many as we can today, and hopefully can retain some of them. This match category, this just changes what you see in mapping types. So you'll notice if I open, when the match category says all, that's all mapping types. So A to Z, there's many. If I change this match category to say contact, that's all I have for a contact, first name. If I change it to be alpha, what are my alpha options? This is what my alpha options are. You don't have to use that if you don't want, but that's what it does. So for this first name field that I'm matching on, I'm going to use a mapping type called first name. The mapping type called first name references a list. If there is a mapping type that references a list, it'll be somewhere on your screen so you can get to it. This one is actually up here in the top right corner, edit the nickname list. So we're going to go to that. Just so you guys know, I haven't touched mine, so this is what ships with our tool. You have this exact same list. You'll notice it says original value, view value, but really what this is nickname on the left, full name on the right. At the very bottom of the screen, there's an asterisk where you can add to the list. The only thing you want to remember here is you can have the full name multiple times, but you can only have one nickname related to the full name. So Sam in this list goes to Samuel. We couldn't also put Sam to Samantha. We need to pick. Quick question here. When you select alpha versus contact and matching category, what does that mean other than getting different options other than the mapping type? There aren't different options other than the mapping type. It just condenses what you see in that mapping type section, Jackie. You'll notice too, let me show you where that's at. So in the help documentation, you see over here to the right, found in this category, the acronym is in the CRM. The cleaned account name is in CRM, right? So they're not extras. There's nothing extra there. It just condenses what you see in the mapping types. Yeah. Again, you don't have to use them. You can leave it at all, and then you'll see every single available mapping type. Okay. So again, the first name list. One version of the nickname, multiple versions of the full name. I also like to tell people if you're having a bad day, you can read this list because it's really funny. It has some really old school names, which just crack me up. It's pretty fleshed out. But again, you can add to this list. So if there's something that isn't here that you need to be here, you can definitely add to this list. For instance, well, I think I added it, yeah. But if you had something that was missing, you can just add to your list here. Great. All right, for last name, I'm just going to leave it as exact. I'm probably going to put an engine on top of that, but we'll talk about those in a minute. We're going to leave email at exact as well. You're going to notice a couple of things that could relate to emails in here, like domain or relaxed domain. Now, they are what they sound like. So I could probably do it here because I'm also saying that the first name and last name have to match. But if you were just matching on email, you would never want to use domain or relaxed domain. Because then it's only looking at, for instance, if my email is jennifer.ranella@crmfusion.com, it's only comparing crmfusion.com, right? If you use domain, it's crmfusion.com. If you use the relaxed domain, it's just simply crmfusion. And then anybody that had that same domain in their email address would be considered a match, right? It probably wouldn't matter here because the first name and last name also have to match, but it's just something to think about. It's not generally used here. We could use it when we get to the account matching step. We could match an email address to a website using the domain. That would make more sense. Great. For company, we are going to use this one called cleaned account name. Cleaned account name is the second mapping type that uses a list. Okay, so we remember up to the top right was where we found the nickname list. Here's the account cleaning list. I haven't edited mine either in PeopleImport, so we'll notice this is exactly what you have as well. This is what ships with the tool. 3 tabs: replace, suffix removal, prefix removal. Now when you hear replace and remove, I just want you to remember that there's not actually data changing in Salesforce or in your spreadsheet. It's just doing that in terms of comparison to see if things match. So if I have a dash in one of the company names, right, and I'm going to now replace it with nothing. So for instance, if my spreadsheet said A-B company and Salesforce said AB company, right, A space B company, it will now match using this mapping type here, right? An ampersand gets changed to the word and spelled out, a period, nothing, plus, and, Saint, ST, so on and so forth. Asterisk at the bottom to add to the list. Remember that long values go on the left. For instance, Saint to ST. If your short value is on the left, that would cause you a lot of problems because anytime there was an ST together in a company name, it would change it to Saint. Let's say you had the Fast Break Company. It would turn into the Fast Saint Break Company. So just make sure that you've got the long version on the left. This will really save you time in the future if you flesh this list out. Every org has their intricacies and their commonalities and how people enter data slightly differently. Spending a little time up front here will save you time in the future. Suffix removal, it'll just strip these from the last word. ABC Co for one, ABC Company for the other, strips the Co and the company, just compares the ABC and says, yes, that's the same. And prefix, same idea, strips the or department of from the beginning of the company name. Great. Mailing city, we're going to keep exact, and then we have mailing state. Now, I'm going to use a state match for this. Remember, I'm in the U.S. and I'm only looking at South Carolina. This is North America. Well, you can add to, there is a state match list where you can add other countries to this list. Let's take a look if we can find our replace list. Documents, PeopleImport data, replace list, state match overrides. Okay. You're going to notice that it gives you, what's working with this. Okay. State match generally, unless that list is edited, will work for your North American information, Canada and US. Great. So I want to move on to these engines over here. These are what we call our fuzzy, transpose, and alpha clean engines. I'm going to put an alpha clean on my first name, my company. That'll work. Alpha clean, let's talk about what that means. Alpha clean is an English alphabet engine. It analyzes the letters A to Z, numbers 0 through 9. It ignores all punctuation and foreign characters. Alpha clean is fantastic for North American data. So basically, it's going to clean out any of that extraneous information. It always goes through the field first. So it'll go through the field first, then the mapping type will go through. So for instance, if you had the A, B, C company in your spreadsheet, and in Salesforce it just said the ABC company, well, if you use an alpha clean, it's going to clear out all that punctuation and just compare the ABC company. The reason I say North American is because you remember I said it ignores foreign characters. Sometimes that's important if you're working in Europe or Asia or something like that. Doesn't mean it can't be used. You just want to understand what happens when it is used. Great. I am going to put a fuzzy on the last name and the city. Fuzzy is a phonetic engine, so at a high level, it removes vowels, it analyzes consonants. It's also phonetic, so C's and K's are the same. So what's going to happen is it's going to create a key, if you will, for the city field. Let's say the city field is Hilton Head, okay? If we've got the name Hilton Head, let me bring up a notepad. Fuzzy takes out the I, right? So it's going to do the H. It's going to ignore the I. L, T, ignores the O. N, H, D. That's the key for Hilton Head, right? So as you're looking at that, any other city that matched that fuzzy would be considered a match. Now, you can imagine that it can be a bit loose, right? Fuzzy on my last name would be RNL. Because it ignores the I, E, and A, it also, any double letters, it only logs once. So any other last name that was RNL will be considered a match. Fuzzy is fantastic for catching spelling errors. It can be loose though, so you just want to be careful with it. If you're doing a scenario like this, where you're matching on so many fields, the chances of getting a false positive are low. Because even though there's a fuzzy on the city and the last name, the first name and the email and the company and the state, they also have to match, right? So the chances of getting that false positive are low. So just pay attention to that as you're working through. Loosening a scenario doesn't necessarily mean removing a field to match on. It could be tightening up the options. All right, let's talk about transpose. I'm going to add transpose to my account name as well. Okay, alpha clean goes through first, transpose goes through last. So if I had, and transpose, just so you know, it's just talking about word order. Doesn't care what order the words are in, just that they're all there. So let's go back to our notepad. Let's say we have the city of Frankfurt. Frankfurt, comma, city of. Okay. Now, if we look at this company field here, we've got a mapping type called cleaned account name, transpose, and alpha clean. Alpha clean goes through the field first. So if we look at this and alpha clean goes through, what does it do? It takes out this comma. Comma's gone. Then the mapping type goes through, and I'm sure you don't have that memorized, but the prefix of the gets removed in the cleaned account name list. So the comes off this first one. Then we have city of Frankfurt, Frankfurt city of. And transpose comes through, places them in alphabetical order, which would just be city Frankfurt of, for both of them, and would say that's a match. Okay, so alpha clean first, transpose last. How's everybody doing? Any questions? I know it's a lot to absorb, so I just would, feel free to send any questions my way. We're going to talk about this last section over here to the left called match blank. So for things to match, they have to be both populated in my spreadsheet and populated in Salesforce. If I were to check match blank for, say, the city field, what I'm saying is it can also be blank on both. So it would be blank in my spreadsheet and blank in Salesforce. So it's either populated in both places or blank in both places to return a match. It will not, I repeat, it will not return where it's populated in one but blank in the other. So if my spreadsheet has a city but Salesforce doesn't, that will not return a match. The only way to find that data would be to not match on that field, which we're going to do in subsequent steps, and I'll show you that in a quick minute. All right, I'm going to keep moving along. So this step here, let's say I rename this. You can rename this however you want. I'm just going to rename it based on the fields I matched on. Notice it names it up here. It's still step 1, but I just matched it based on, or named it based on what I matched on. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to loosen this a bit. So over here, I apologize, my panel's in the way. There we go. All right, so over here to the right, I'm just going to click Clone Step. Now it works like a funnel, so I want to make sure when I clone it, it pops up in step 2. So let's pay attention here. Clone Step. We'll notice it put it in step 3. I'm not sure why it does that, but it does. So what I need to do is I'm going to click on step 3 and move it up a step. Okay, so now I've got step 2 here. So as I'm looking at this, what I want to do is just loosen this a bit. So I think for this case, what I'll do is I'll just remove the matching on the city. So now it's just first name, last name, email, company, and state. I'm going to clone it again. Move that to step 3. First, last, email, company, state. Let's take out the state this time. I'm going to clone it again. This time I'm going to take out the company. And maybe one more time. This time I'll take up the first name. And maybe on this step, I'm going to take up the fuzzy on the last name. So, I mean, if the email matches, I probably don't have to worry. But again, I can take that off there just to tighten it up a bit more. But I would know that if the last name and the email matched, that is a true match for me. If it isn't for you, you don't want to go this loose. So again, I have 6 lead steps here, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot to move these up. That went up. 5, I should say. 5 lead steps. You could have more, you could have less. Depends on how much data you have and how much data is populated. Okay, everybody's still pretty quiet. All right, we're going to move to contacts. So we do have to start from scratch here because it's a different table. So when we, when we mapped in stage 1, the fields are different. So we're going to start with the exact same process. So I'm just going to go through this very quickly, just because the leads and the contacts are similar. It's just fields that are different. So again, maybe I match first name to first name, last to last. This should be company to account. Where's my, just missing it. There it is. Company to account. Maybe I take this one step further and do street, city, state. All right, and then I'm going to implement my mapping types. I'm going to use first name, fuzzy on a last. For cleaned account name, another couple options you can have when you're looking at accounts is this acronym match. Acronym is what it sounds like, right? So if it's IBM in Salesforce, but it's international business machines in my spreadsheet, acronym would match those. Acronym clean name. Let's say my spreadsheet says the International Business Machines Co. and Salesforce says IBM. It'll first do the cleaned account, the account clean list, right? So it'll first reference that. So it'll remove the and the co, right? Prefix and suffix, and then do the acronym. That would match. You might also use first XX words. And you'll notice when I do that, it'll say, how many words do you want to start with? 3, 2, 4, 5. So just a couple of other things you might use for your account name. We're going to stick in our org with this cleaned account name, the transpose and an alpha clean. For street, we have a couple options for street. We have street address match and we have relaxed address match. So for street address match, what you want to remember is that it does the directionals and the roads, but the data points have to be there. For instance, not to be confusing, West and W would be compared, road and RD, avenue and AVE. But they have to exist in both records. So if one of them was, 123 Northeast Willow Avenue, and the other one was 123 NE Willow, with no Ave or avenue or road or street or anything, it won't compare them in street address match because the data point is missing. Additionally, if something is spelled improperly, let's say somebody typed in 123 West, WST, Main Street, and the other person put 123 W, Main ST. It doesn't work. It doesn't recognize West if it's spelled incorrectly. Okay, so data point's there, spelled correctly. Boulevard is BLVD. If it's BVLD, doesn't know what that is. Okay. A more relaxed way of doing that is a relaxed address match. Relaxed address match focuses on the lowest common denominator. So for instance, let's say you had 123 Northeast Willow Avenue. And then we have 123 Willow Road North Suite 102. It ignores directionals and roads and streets and suites. And it will just look at, the only thing it's going to compare is the street number and the street. Okay, so these two would be compared the same because it's only analyzing that 123 Willow. Sorry about my guess there. Great. All right, I'm going to put a fuzzy on the city, and I'm going to do a state match on the state. And again, I'm just going to clone these. I'm going to clone this one. I'm going to take out the street. I'm going to clone it, take out the city, clone it. I think I'll just take out the state. That'll be good enough there. All right, next step is your account match step. So if we are creating, let's say we want to be inserting leads. This is the hypothesis. We want to insert leads. If the records aren't found already existing in Salesforce, we are going to insert leads. However, if it finds an existing account in Salesforce, it will want to create a new contact on that account. That's the default behavior. There is a way we can override that. I will show you it, but I just want you to understand where that's at. If we're inserting contacts, it needs to identify what account it should be put on. If it can't find an account, it's going to create a new contact and a new account. If it finds the account, it'll just create a new contact on the existing account. So that's why our account match step is here and must be here. Great. So let's do the matching on those fields. And we'll notice this is now the account table here. So company to account name. Maybe we do phone this time. Street, city, state. The only one we need to talk about is phone. I'll tell you what I like to use for that, and you can utilize whatever works for you guys. So for phone, if you're working in North America, you could do this relaxed NA phone match. What you want to remember about relaxed NA, North America is the NA, is that it only compares the 7 in the middle. So it ignores your +1s, your area codes, any extensions. That's what that relaxed NA is. I like to use numeric on a phone. So numeric only compares numbers and numeric characters. Now, the one issue you may run into is, let's say we have these two phone numbers. Okay, those are the same phone number. Numeric will not recognize these as being the same. The reason it won't is because dashes in parentheses, they're not two numeric characters. so it ignores those. But this period is a decimal point, which is a true numeric character. So it leaves this here, but then it's, it's not analyzing your parentheses or your dashes, right? So it doesn't look like the same number to numeric. Now, there is a way to get around this, okay? And the way that you would do this is you would choose numeric as your mapping type, and over here to the right, you would select alpha clean. Now remember, alpha clean goes through first. It ignores all punctuation. Alpha clean will go through that phone field first. It's going to take out the periods, the parentheses, the dashes. Then numeric is going to come through and read the numbers left to right and be able to say, yes, that's the same phone number. We have a quick question. Samuel, just want to clarify, if it does not find an existing account, it will create a new contact and account. There is going to be a place here when we get to final matching conditions, Samuel, where we're going to tell it what we want to create. If we say we want to create new contacts, yes, it will create a new contact and a new account if it doesn't find the existing account. And that's because contacts can't float out in the ether. They are always attached to accounts. But we'll talk about that in a minute, the differences between if we decide to insert leads or contacts. But yes, it will do that. Great. I'm just going to do a quick clone on this account. We'll just loosen it up a bit. I'm going to take out the phone. I'm going to clone it and take out the street. And I'm just going to do one more and do a company state. So I've got a pretty fleshed out list here, right? I've got these 5 lead steps, these 4 contacts, and these 4 accounts. Great. Let's see what the final matching conditions looks like. So the final matching conditions decides what to do if it doesn't find the record. So if it didn't find the record from your spreadsheet in Salesforce, what should it do? So you'll notice up here that it says create new lead. Okay, so let's pretend like we want to create a new lead. If we're going to be creating a new lead, we can use a lead assignment rule to assign that lead to a specific person. Now, remember in stage 1, we didn't talk about this, but we're going to talk about it now. I didn't have an owner mapped. So if we go over here to the top left, stage 1, we're just going to flip back there real quick. I don't have an owner indicated, right? So what happens if something goes in and I don't use a lead assignment rule? So in stage 3 here, I don't have this checked. Who would it belong to? It would belong to me, right? Because I'm the one who inserted it. So if you specifically know who those leads or their contacts from your spreadsheet should belong to, you're going to want to match to this owner ID field. And again, you want to make sure that you put update, do not update, so on and so forth. This is the user ID. Putting in Jennifer Ranella in my spreadsheet is not helpful. Here's the caveat. It does sometimes work. However, you notice when we were doing our conditions that I have an inactive user in there as well with my exact same name. It doesn't always find the active one. There's nothing built in the back end that says make sure it's the active one. It doesn't do that. So you can get those errors, same errors that would be thrown from Salesforce. This user isn't active. You can't assign this to an inactive person. So you want to make sure, best practice is to always put the ID of the user. Great. Let's go back to stage 3. All right, so create a new lead, use lead assignment rule. You can do that. Create new contact, new account. So if you're not inserting leads but contacts, you'll see it automatically tells you new contact, new account, and you also get this pop-up here. This comes into play when maybe I have a spreadsheet that has the same account but multiple people, right? Jen Ranella, Kelly Jenkins, Ashley Sarant, all at CRM Fusion. I don't want to create 3 new CRM Fusion accounts. I want to create 1 new CRM Fusion account with 3 new contacts. So this is how I do that here. I would check the box and say limit new account duplicates by field. I would add a match condition, and which field is going to tell me what to limit. It is going to be the company account name field. I want it to look at this field, right? And again, you can do your same options over here and say if those match, right, based on this, only create 1 of those accounts but 3 new contacts. The last option here is do nothing. So maybe you're just updating data. You can use this for that too. For our purposes, we're going to create a new lead, and I'm going to use this lead assignment rule. The last thing that I want you to look at is this under here, extras, create tasks. I'm in the final match, but you see if we go to step 1, it's down here at the bottom too. This is the section where you can assign a task or assign a campaign. Now, we're in stage 3. In stage 4, we can globally assign campaigns and tasks. The reason they're here in stage 3 is that these are step specific. So if in step 1 it finds 2 for my spreadsheet, I can assign them to a specific campaign, right? If you globally are going to assign things to campaigns and give them tasks, so your whole spreadsheet should get tasks and campaigns and they're the same, you can do that in stage 4. This is more specific in stage 3 because it's each different step, so it's only going to apply to what record is found in that step, right? So these go to this campaign. If they're found in step 2, maybe they go to a different one or they get a different task, so on and so forth. Because these are more specific, they're going to override the global settings in stage 4. We're just going to go to stage 4. I'm going to detail it out, but I'll show you where it also reiterates how that works. So let's head to stage 4. We'll notice up here at the top, it says default campaign. And you'll notice it says campaign to assign all created and updated lead and or contacts to if they are not assigned to a campaign during the, it should say during one of the matching steps in stage 3. Stage 3 is your matching step. So it's saying this only applies if it didn't find it, right? If you didn't have something inside in stage 3. This is more specific, so it overrides stage 4. So for instance, you could just do step 1, do something. And then stage 4 is for whatever's left. Or maybe you're just doing the first contact match step or something like that. Okay. We have some options here. We can assign an object to a campaign. We click that box, and we'll notice that I've got this here, which is all of my active campaigns in Salesforce. If it is not active, it will not show here. You're going to need to go and activate it and then put it in here. Okay, so maybe I do just a test and I choose the status for that campaign, sent. I could also have information in my spreadsheet. So maybe I've got the campaign ID in my spreadsheet. So I could say access campaign ID from input data. And then I'm going to choose the column header in my spreadsheet, that's the campaign ID, and the status field from there. It can work either way. I'm going to choose that way. My spreadsheet's blank there. The second one here, default task creation. So again, you'll notice that it says create a task for the owner of the created, updated lead or contact if none was created during one of the matching steps. So again, this first task is if you didn't create something in stage 3 for one of those step-specific sections. This is pretty standard. Create a task, what's the subject, what's the status, the priority, due date, set reminder, any comments. Same thing for this task, an additional task for the owner of all records imported in this data source. That's you. Yeah. And then down at the bottom, you can create an owner for all created tasks. So you could say, this should go to our marketing, this task that I created here, that should go to our marketing person no matter what, right? I don't want to give it to the owner of that lead or contact. It's going to go to Anya, who's our marketing genius. Okay. You could also do owner for all tasks where the lead is owned by a queue or a group. If the lead is owned by a queue or a group, the task does not get created. So if you want to make sure that it is created and you're notified, maybe you give it to yourself so that you know that went to a queue or a group. And that could happen if you're using a lead assignment rule or something like that. And then the owner for all tasks or the contact lead owner is inactive. If the contact or lead owner is inactive, you get assigned the task by default. They do get created and you own them. So if you want to give them to somebody else, you could do that. Are there any questions? Hope everybody's doing okay. We're going to move to the final stage. So we're going to head over to stage 5. When we get to the screen, you'll see down at the bottom right, we're going to need to click Find Matches. So let's click Find Matches. It's going to read through my data, see downloading lead data, here's contact, here's account. This is going to take a minute, so we'll just let this process and we'll let your brains rest for a minute. Now's a good time for questions if you have anything. Great. This saves what I do by default, which is I like to group things. So I'm just going to take the groups off so we can take a look at this. So generally it would pop up like this, just a table with the object and the action. I like to group them so that I know what's being created and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that object header and drag it to the top. And then I'm going to grab the action, so either it's update or new, and drag that to the top so it subsets it. So then I've got new contact on existing account is the first one. See it here? Yeah. Second one is updating a contact. Third one is a new lead. Here, and the fourth one down here is update a lead. Great. Now, my final match conditions were to create new leads. So why would it create new contacts? This is what I was talking about. If it found an existing account, it's going to create a new contact on that account instead of the new lead as I requested. So by default, it created these new contacts on this existing account. You can change this. So I'm just going to change one of these. I can right-click on this record here and say move to final match, which is new lead. So I'm going to say move to final match, and you can see that guy's name is Geo Michael. And we're going to say, yes, please move it. And we'll notice that Geo Michael is now down here in the new leads. So you can move those if you decide to do that. Great. You notice this match parent account. Match is going to be on anything that's an update. Right? So contact update, these are the contact IDs, and contacts always have account IDs, so the parent is that account ID. Obviously, this new contact existing account at the top, there is no contact ID, it doesn't exist, it will create it, and here's the parent account ID. Right? There's no leads here, but here's the lead IDs for the updates. So that's what we're looking at. If I open up a table join, or the plus sign here, I shouldn't say table join, the plus sign will give us the information from Salesforce. So when I click that, here's the existing account and the information. These highlights in blue are the fields I matched on: city, state, street, account name, phone. And that's the ID. If I want to look at that record, if I want to see what that account is, I can click on that hyperlink. Sorry, let me get off it. I can click on this hyperlink up here in the parent account, and it takes me out to Salesforce. And here is that record, that account. The reason it did that was because of the options I have selected. So over here to the bottom left again in options, I have Use Salesforce to View Objects checked. Let's uncheck it and see what happens. So now let's look at that account. This is what you see. It's more of a printable view of that record. Sorry, I can make that bigger. That's the difference there. There's no best practice. Whatever you prefer will work there. I like to go out to Salesforce, so I'm going to leave mine as is. Let's take a look at the contacts. So here's one where it matched to this contact, and you can see the purple highlights on those fields. Those are the fields that you matched on. So let's talk for a minute about analyzing this. How well did your scenario work? So for instance, if I look here and I see there's a new lead, and it's for this Crystal Baker. What I might do, and does Crystal Baker have an email? Let's see if we can find Crystal Baker's email. There it is. So what I might do is I might take a quick look at the things that are going to be inserted. So I'm going to go out here to Salesforce, and I'm going to look for Crystal Baker. I do have a couple of Crystal Bakers. So let's take a look here. company. My spreadsheet says that she works for A&D Inc. She does have the same email, it appears. Let's make that bigger. crystalb@spiceworldinc.com. Okay, so the email exists. So the only difference here is the company. So if I think that that's a correct person, right, I think that that is the same person, I might want to change a match step, especially because those emails match. So maybe what we need to do is go back to stage 3. I think she's a lead. I thought we did last name email. And I might, oh, sorry about that, guys. Go back to stage 5 here. Where's Crystal? Okay. Title, street. So what I'm sorry, I apologize. So what I might want to do is see if I couldn't match the data differently, right, to find that record. I think she's leads. Okay, so, oh, she's probably not in South Carolina. I forgot. Sorry, I just want to take a look at this. I'm trying to figure out why. So there's no address data in here. I quit. The reason that didn't, just so you know, I was trying to figure out, I was like, what did I do? The reason, the last lead step that was the loosest was a match on the last name in the email. However, I set a condition that only compared to South Carolina, right? And this lead here has no address data. So it's not even included. That's why it didn't match to it. So I would have to change my conditions in order to match to it. I'm guessing this is the same way. This is in Florida. So it didn't even compare to this lead, which is why it didn't match. Now, that's interesting, right? So maybe for me, I would say, okay, I need to, incorporate Florida, or I need to take off my conditions in PeopleImport so that things would then match. That's the reason it didn't. Not because the last name and email matched, it did. It's because I set a condition to only compare to South Carolina leads, accounts, and contacts in Salesforce. But that's the process. That's what I would do. I would look at any insert. So if we look down at the bottom of the screen, here's my information box. You see it? It says I'm going to be updating 12 leads, inserting 3, updating 20 contacts, inserting 1, and updating 21 accounts. I would look at anything that was an insert, so anything that was a new, like your new contact and your new lead. I would do a quick search on them. Do they exist? Not all of them. I mean, your lists are probably going to have much more than these 4 that I've got on my list. But you might want to do quick spot checks and then simply go back to stage 3, figure out which step you need to add or loosen a bit and kind of tweak it there. And then, of course, if you come back to stage 5, you have to click Find Matches again if you made changes. But, working with the tool that way so that you could see what happens, okay? See, if you can kind of catch more of that data. It isn't 100%, but you want to get as close to that as you possibly can. The other things you can do over here to the bottom left is I can go ahead and say check none. So if they're not checked, when I click check none, pay attention to the information box here. Everything goes to 0. If I do check update, it'll just show the updates. I'm going to check none again. And then I check insert, and it'll show those. So you could just do your inserts. If you didn't want to update information, you don't have to process those at all. You'll notice that it is updating one account even when I check inserts, because of course it's inserting that new contact on the existing account. And then those fields on that existing account will either be updated or not based on what I set in stage 1. I can export this data. So it'll ask me how I want to export it, Excel or CSV. Let's go ahead and process our inserts. So I'm going to insert this new contact on this existing account, and I'm going to insert these 3 new leads. So over here to the bottom right, I'm going to say process the checked objects. And you'll notice I just checked inserts. So it's just checked these 4, and in the information box you can see that information there. So let's click process. We get this pop up. So I can either import with errors, cancel the import, or check and fix those errors. Remember, I skipped that one initially, so I just wanted to show you. If you forget to do that check step in stage 1, you will get this here if it identified errors. So I'm going to say check and fix errors. You'll see I've got one error, and again, it's this email address with that extra space. So I'm going to copy that current value. I'm going to take that space out, update the value, and say OK. And then it's immediately going to begin processing. If you click ignore the errors, it'll begin processing as well. You just have to be ready for if they are true errors that Salesforce is going to, not allow an import. You will receive those error logs. Okay, great. So PeopleImport is complete, and there were 3 errors. Good. Let's see what the errors were. So here's my log file. You'll have a log file for every day that you run PeopleImport, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so here's my error. Assigned to ID, ID a value of incorrect type. 00G is a queue. So I have some rule in my org that's saying, hey, you can't assign this to a queue or a group. That's my error, just so you guys know. So we need to make my changes. Now let's take a look. My favorite file here is, you can notice that you've got the log file, that these all go in the restore folder, these 3 different steps. I like this final results file the best, but you can look at all 3 of them. So let's take a look at final results first. Okay, it looks like the grid, and you'll notice here's my new contact existing account. You'll notice the match here. It now gives me the created contact ID, right? So if we look here, it's there as well. It pushes over that created contact ID. So this file is complete here. We did not update these. Here's the use. True, that's the update, and it created that contact. False, it did not touch these, but here's the information on them. True, it created these new leads, and here are my lead IDs. Okay, lead inserted, you'll see it there. Contact inserted, no account update required. See that? Here's the owner here. Here's that owner that I got my errors on. And the extra information. Now, let's go back here. All right, let's take a look at our restore file. So this is the account update restore. So it made one update to this account because it was just that one. This is the information as it was before we touched it today. Now, it did say in my file that no account update was required, but if it had made changes, this is how you can roll back those changes. So you would use demand tools, Mass Effect, to load this spreadsheet and put these fields back to what they were. Great. So let's say OK. Let's take a look at one of these leads. Okay. So this is what happened. I got created, and then it did that lead assignment rule to change it to Glenn. That's a queue. How's everybody doing? Is everybody okay so far? I know it's a lot of information to take in. We have a couple more things to go over. They're fairly simple things. Think about your questions, what you need to ask, anything that I can clarify, maybe something that I wasn't clear enough about or you need explained in a different manner. So we can save these scenarios. At the bottom left here, I can click Save Scenario. I have 2 options here. You see this? I've got Save Scenario to Server and Save Scenario locally to disk. So Save Scenario to Server is my whole org. So you can see the company up here, Hotshot Tools. So that is all of the users that have PeopleImport in my org and everything that they've saved here. Yeah. Save locally to disk is if I wanted to save it on my computer somewhere. So if I didn't want to save it to the company save, server, I can save it locally to disk. Now you do have to enable this option. So again, in your options menu, I'm going to close that real quick. In your options menu, I have this checked, show, save, load local scenarios. I have it checked. so that I can keep it. If you don't check that, you won't see that option when you click Save Scenarios. This load scenario from disk won't be there as well, but that will pop up when you choose that option. So maybe I save this scenario as my April public class, and it's going to go in training. And I save that scenario to my server. Sorry, somebody's got their hand up. Carl, go ahead and type in your question into the question box, please. Everybody's on mute, so. All right, Jackie has a question. If you're importing contacts to existing accounts, is there a way to import all the contacts to the parent account instead of the child account that the address in your spreadsheet matches? Jackie, that's a good question. It's going to find the account that it's going to put the contact on. So if your address data is different in your spreadsheet, it's not going to be able to do that, right? So you're going to need to figure out how to identify matching to your parent account. It might be in a different manner. I'm not sure how to do that, but there's no way that you can get to here and say, oh, put it on the parent, right? It has to match the data from your spreadsheet to the data on that parent account. It's a really good question, but you're going to have to think a little bit critically about how your data is set up in your org and how you can make that happen. Because this is just software, right? It's just matching data. It doesn't have Intel or, you know, human brain, if you will. So you're going to have to think about how you want to do that. Let me know if you need me to clarify that, Jackie. Carl, is save to server like saving to a share drive? It's our server, Carl. It's not a share drive on your computer. It's not anything anybody can access. We don't have that in demand tools. We just have it in PeopleImport. But it's like your little portion of a server. So everybody, you know what, Carl? It is like a share drive on your local, if you want to look at it that way, where everybody that can log into PeopleImport in your org will say the same thing if you save it to that server. So if I save something, Ashley in my org can see it, so can Kelly, so can everybody else. Sorry. I kind of wander on that, Carl. I apologize. Jackie, are you good? Did I answer your question? Perfect. Okay, so we just did that, save that scenario. So what we're going to do is I'm going to clear this scenario. So we're going to say clear scenario. It's going to clear out everything that I just did. Go back to stage 1 here. We're going to say load scenario. Well, let's make sure our file's in there. It is. Okay, good. We're going to load our scenario. We should see our April public class from today. You'll see the modified date is today's date. We're going to say load. We'll notice it popped everything up here. Campaign ID and status. Remember, we left that off. It's still off. Stage 2, here's my conditions that we did today. Stage 3, here's all our steps, right? Stage 4, a couple of assignments, and stage 5. And I imagine when we run this find matches again, we shouldn't have any inserts, right? Because we did all of our inserts. So if this is the same one, we should only see updates. And you'll notice down in the information box, we only have updates. All right, everyone. Sorry, I'm thinking through making sure I told you everything I wanted to tell you. Yeah, I think we've covered everything, so let the questions flow if you've got them. Hi, Carolyn. You must have missed the beginning. I'll explain in a quick second how you can get the recording, okay? Just give me a second here. All right, questions, please. All right, so Carolyn, go to the PeopleImport Today page. Right here, this box, tech support, you're going to click on that. You're going to enter your name, company, this information. Your case reason is going to be recorded webinar request. Product is going to be PeopleImport. You're just going to say, please send me a copy of today's recording. Cool. All right, everyone. I so appreciate you joining me this lovely Wednesday morning. Hopefully you got a lot out of the training. That's the end of our demo today, so feel free to have the rest of your day back. You can jump off. I'm going to stay on a little bit longer. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'd be happy to answer anything. If I can clarify anything, or if I jumped around at some point and confused you, please just let me know. I'll be happy to go over anything again. Otherwise, thanks again for joining us. Good luck with the tool. We're here if you need us. Thank you, Jackie. Have a good rest of the day. Hi, Carl. I'm glad you found it informative. So to get to the help documents, the easiest way to get there is if you're on the Today page, you can go to this box that says Self-Help, and then you click right here, Go to Help System. It's this online help, and it'll take you right there. Sorry, I don't like Edge. I'm going to pop up Chrome real quick. It's going to take you right here to the help documentation. Right? Here's the best practices and step-by-step instructions by stage. That's the easiest way to get there. My pleasure, Carl. Have a great rest of the day. Judith, Sharon, is there anything that you need from me? Thanks, Carl. I appreciate that.